On a modular, it's easy to play with the balance between controlled and generative elements. There's something exciting about feeding the modular specific ideas and at the same time setting it up to generate variations. That's true for a lot of aspects like clock, timing and evolving sound design, but also very much for melodies. A quantizer is a great tool in this, not just to create sequences from simple CV signals like an LFO, but also to create entire setups that allow you to mix and evolve a set of melodic variations, which is a great way to sculpt interesting build-ups, improvisations and performances with movement and unique shifting melodies and patterns, rather than getting stuck in a 16-step loop. This is especially exciting with a multi-channel quantizer, which allows you to use the same trick on multiple voices and create layers of interesting related sequences, which is what I'll focus on today. Just in case you don't know the quantizer, you can send it any kind of CV signal and the quantizer will convert that signal to a 1 volt per octave signal every time it receives a trigger. So you can feed a quantizer something like a looping envelope and trigger it with a steady clock to create a nice melodic sequence. Here's that quantizer with steady clock and the 1 volt per octave and gate out of the quantizer controlling a simple classic synth voice. You can feed the quantizer individual signals like a looping envelope or unquantized sequence, but the fun starts when you patch a CV mixer before the quantizer. This allows you to mix multiple signals before quantization. A sequence, random voltage, fast looping envelope and steady offset voltage are my personal favorite, but you can use anything you like. This setup allows you to create an evolving melody by tweaking the mix of CV signals used to feed the quantizer by hand. If you like to support my work or you want to get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I've used in my videos, have a look at my Patreon. You can also support my channel through affiliate links in the video description. But now, let's dive right in. A multi-channel quantizer allows you to use the same trick on multiple voices and create layered melodies. For example, the ADAC 207 I'm using here is a quad quantizer. Each section has its own in and outputs, but they all follow the same selected output scale. Effectively, this gives you 4 quantizers with CV and trigger inputs and outputs to drive a synth voice each. Just by feeding the 4 quantizers the same mix of CV signals used before, as well as a clock, you create a multi-voice setup. Here the voices are panned slightly around the stereo field for a nice effect. However, this isn't so interesting because all voices follow the exact same sequence. So the next step is to create variations for each voice. To create a bit of space in the flowchart, I use the same mix of CV signals but simplify that part to this graphic. To add variations, a simple trick is to use different triggers for each quantizer. Here the master clock is driving a clock divider and different divisions are used to trigger the 4 quantizers. Especially a mix of even and uneven divisions creates nice patterns. Slow divisions create longer held notes. If you want to push that to the next level, you can use custom trigger or gate patterns for one or multiple voices. This is where this trick really comes to life. Here I use the Oxy 1 to create 4 patterns. Especially triggering voices in alternating patterns works great. Of course, because all quantizers receive the same input, creating an evolving CV input mix applies to all 4 voices. If you want, you can decouple the moment the quantizer is triggered from the moment the voice is triggered. For example, here the bassline's quantizer is only triggered every now and then by a custom pattern, but the voice is triggered every step by a copy of the master clock, creating pulsing notes that only change every now and then. Starting from the bass setup, you can also create variations by tweaking the CV input for each voice. Just multiply the mix of CV signals and send each of them through an attenuator before the quantizer. Now you have control over the mix input as well as the range of that signal sent to each voice. Of course, this idea is even better with interesting trigger patterns. In all these patches, you can play with the note options and evolve or change scales for the voices. If you like to explore the generative side of this idea, it's easy to add modulation to the setup. For example, instead of sending CV inputs directly to a mixer, you can send some or all of them through a VCA first. Now you can use other elements to control the presence of each input in the mix. Here, a slow sine LFO is used to fade the sequence in and out, and an inverted version of that LFO is fading the looping envelope in and out. A slow random voltage is used to control the amount of random signal in the mix. All voices are following the same sequence again though. Another option is to manipulate the CV signal after the mixer. Here's the basic setup with each of the quantizers triggered with its own sequencer, shown with extra small visuals to save space. The 4 CV signals used for melodies are sent directly to the mixer, but after the mixer the CV signal is split up to 4 VCAs before each signal is fed into a quantizer. Using attenuators gives you manual control, but VCAs allow you to automate the process with things like LFOs or random voltages. This adds generative melodic range changes per voice. In a similar way, you can add a lot of complexity by modulating the trigger inputs for the quantizers. You can use tools like crossfaders, switches and logic modules to patch pattern variations. But here, 3 voltage-controlled clock dividers are used to drive the quantizer channels. Modulating those with things like LFOs or random voltages creates interesting shifting patterns. Generative patterns or sequences work great for this. Here's a quick example with the Chaos Devices Moskwa spitting out interesting patterns. Of course, all these concepts can be combined, and because I have limited time for these videos, I use the same voices in all these patches. But with this trick, it's worth it to spend more time creating interesting movement and changes between the voices to set up nicer sounding evolving results. In the next demo, the 4 voices aren't all kept at the same strength. Instead, a single smooth random voltage is controlling the presence of 2 voices, and an inversed version the presence of the 2 other voices, all with simple filter modulation. That same voltage is also used to modulate a few other things like wave shape or LFO speed, altogether becoming a more interesting generative story. I'll let this patch run for a bit and explain the voices in overlay notes. Finding a balance between controlled and generative elements led me to one more idea. Of course, you can also use individual input signals for each channel. For example, you can send each voice a different sequence. Even though all the sequencers used here can be quantized, there's no need to worry about setting, mixing and matching scales and quantization for any of those. Because through the quantizer they all follow the same easy to set scale, and any changes made to that scale. However, you still have control over individual sequences. Pushing that idea further, I arrived at the matrix mixer, sending multiple CV signals to the matrix inputs and using the first 4 matrix outputs to feed the quantizer, you can make a unique mix for each voice. Here, the first 3 channels are programmed melodic sequences, so I can send either or a mix of those to any of the 4 voices. Then there's a fast looping envelope, a random voltage and an offset signal. This creates a semi-generative melodic palette. I can use pre-made sequences, but at the same time blend those sequences, add randomization, mix variations and direct the sequences to different voices. Here's an example. I hope all that gives you some inspiration to mess around with your quantizer. If you'd like to learn more, have a look here, and as always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more modular content from me. But that's it for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.